Today we are welcoming Felix Wassman, co-founder of Resoniks, to AI for That. Felix, thanks so much for making the time.
Yeah, likewise, Jack. Thanks for having me.
So just for starters, in one sentence, tell our audience, what is Resoniks?
We check the integrity of manufactured parts using sound. Think of it like a guitar, and we can hear if it's in or out of tune.
I love that. And you started as a non-AI company, but then you realized that AI is actually one of the key enablers. How do you think about the role of AI in your business? What did you realize? Brief.
Well, we had a bit of a pivot along the way from our initial idea, and I mean that usually happens. Don't fall in love with your first idea, right? And initially, the AI part was not something that was critical for that first solution, but then we realized what we can actually do with acoustics, and a lot of it goes in the domain of pattern recognition, and in our case, figuring out if something sounds like it should, or if it sounds like an abnormal part that's defective. And AI can really connect all these dots, find these patterns that the human cannot, especially if we're not in a lab setting. If we're in the manufacturing floor where you have environmental noise, where you don't have the perfect environment, right? Because every part, even if they're good parts, will sound slightly different. And that's a big advantage of AI, making sense of these patterns and actually for us, making scalable what we do. Because
Mhm.
in some regard, this acoustic testing has been done for decades, but it's been a human making that decision in a much more controlled environment. But AI makes this really scalable.
So you're deploying a solution that helps people build and ensure structural integrity in what they're building. Am I getting it?
Exactly. We're the inspection that makes sure that the part is good. So whether that's end of line, think about a engine component that's just been forged, machined. You want to put the engine together. You want to know that the part is good before you do that full assembly and have to take it apart if it's defective. So we can do that. We can check the quality also during processes for efficiency gains. But yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's I can appreciate for manufacturers how essential that is. And I'm curious to go to your background and a shift there. Before you started Resonix, you worked at a large enterprise where you told me you used to optimize for 0.5% efficiency, which ultimately would translate into millions of dollars or euros of savings. Um, Now, as an early stage startup, 0.5 efficiency gains won't get you anywhere. You're much more in the fast decisions, fail fast, learn fast kind of mode. Uh, I'm curious what that shift in decision making, really in paradigms, has been like for you as a leader. What's been challenging about it? What have you learned as you've moved from one side of the spectrum to the other?
Yeah. Well, now our customers make that decision. They want to optimize by 0.5% efficiency. That has a huge impact in industries like automotive, obviously. In my previous role, I was focusing on data-driven decisions, and I had a lot more historical data to work with to make those projections and make decisions based on data. Um, but also there, you have to make decisions fast. You can't always trust the data. You need to make sense of also all the other things around the data. So it's more about like how do you set up your team or now your company for success? Um, how do you make decisions? Rather make them fast and based on like the best that you can, than not make any decisions at all. And
What's
also,
an, what's an example of a recent decision where maybe in your old paradigm you would have deliberated over it for ages, and instead in this decision you moved fast? Maybe it wasn't you, maybe you were setting the context for a team member to make that decision.
I would say more like revenue forecasts are much harder for a new starting company, and you base of course, a lot of your planning upon those projections. So instead of having 5 years of historical data, it's more looking at the market potential and opportunities, maybe a bit more competitive research, and speaking to your core customers to understand that. So it's a lot more like soft data points that you take into consideration to make the same decision in the end. Like how do you plan like your resources and how much time do you need to get to a certain revenue goal and so on.
I want to ask you two follow-up questions on that. The first is I can imagine, especially after several years of you really feeling like you were in a comfort zone, getting good at finding solutions with optimization. What was the sense in you that it was time to leave that comfort zone and time to really dive into deep uncertainty,
Yeah.
really startup land?
Well, at my previous role, I kind of always made sure I never really got stuck in that comfort zone too much because my thing was always fixing things that people kind of stayed away from. The company itself was growing quite a bit, also in international markets. So a lot of stuff was happening, but that also caused a lot of like process issues. And I was always interested in kind of solving those or finding smarter ways to get these things running. Um, and already then I was prototyping stuff, but more from like a Excel SQL kind of side and building things that could make us run more efficiently before the proper tools were in place to actually take that over. So this kind of allowed me to climb the career ladder quite quickly in my previous role. Like every year or two, I was working on new things. So I never got too comfortable, but this I figured out was something I really enjoyed, like fixing stuff, like solving something that's not super easy to solve. And in general, I always had that interest to start my own company. So that also led me to doing that executive MBA, for example, which dove me more into like the innovation, entrepreneurial company leadership side, kind of add on to my business background that I already had and immerse myself in a group of people that don't come from that pure business background, because that's one of the best thing about that executive MBA. There were doctors, lawyers, engineers. For example, my current co-founder I met during that program. And since that also is something that I have in my personal life, that I'm always exposing myself to change, just by, for example, changing cities or countries every couple years since I was going to school, basically also due to what my parents were working. I've always had this element of change and doing something new, and that really fits well into the startup
It,
system because there's always a lot of uncertainty. There's always a lot of change, and the better you can cope with it, the better I would say you can also make those decisions that you have to.
yeah, yeah. It totally makes sense how if you've grown up even with those rapid changes, that instead of if you have enough stability in your background, then you can greet those changes with resilience, even with excitement, and not with, oh my goodness, my world's being turned upside down.
Yeah. And curiosity, right? Because we're always curious at what happens next. And that also drives us.
Yeah. I wonder, I know that you have offices in multiple different countries, three, maybe soon four countries. Is that right?
Two, soon three. We work from The Hague, the Netherlands, where we're headquartered. So that's also where I'm sitting right now. So a very international place to set up a company. Then we have our site in Tampere and in Finland, which is actually where about 2/3 of the team work, especially the engineering side. My co-founder Fabian had the opportunity with Intel to transfer his knowledge from Munich to Tampere, and that opened up that possibility basically. And now we have our COO Jörg in Munich, and we plan to open an office there in the next 18 months, which is just a location that's close to our market, close to our customer, and that's also where our roots are. So that makes sense. But yeah, from these three locations we operate now.
Yeah. So it sounds like a distributed but in office. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah. So it's
and
we have a hybrid way of working, but most of the team would be in the office, especially on the hardware engineering side in Tampere. We do have our lab, we have the system that we're building, our products. So it there's some requirement, of course, working with hardware to be on site, but we are not. Yeah, we're working from those 3 locations and not fully remote, which is a big difference.
Yeah, that is. Of course, with hardware, you're interacting with the physical world. Something that not every AI company is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as whether as part of that distribution or just as you guys have grown to 20-ish people, um, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered and found your way through on the people side, on the organizational side?
Yeah. So it's really great having access to multiple talent pools because we can hire fast. And one of the things that's also close to my co-founder and my goals is really building a great culture and having a very diverse and international team. So, but diverse not only from the background, but also from the skill set. Something that we feel like we've really been able to do. I think we have more than 12 nationalities in that team of 20. So it's a very good mix that also comes with challenges, of course. Communication is one of those. Things sometimes get lost in translation, for example. That's also where having multiple sites, don't make it easier, I would say. But we found ways around that to make it work.
What what are
Combine.
what are some of the ways that you found around those difficulties?
So we, for example, my co-founder and I, we initially start more with like all hands company updates where we speak to everyone, where we communicate the messages, the news, like we would like to receive them, because like we just talk on the phone a lot, for example, and just update each other rather than writing. But then uh, the engineers, the software engineers, they of course also like to read the information at their own time. Makes it easier for them to digest or look into certain things. So based on the feedback in the company, we've turned it around that we actually have this internal newsletter now that goes out every week, which summarizes all the information, and then the all hands happens less frequently, but opens more the room for questions or discussions. So not only has that improved communication, but through this process, we actually are able to get information more from the team as well. So we just have this process where everyone, shares the updates and someone combines it into that newsletter, and that's been working really well. Also, I myself actually really like it because it's a good way to keep updated on a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate the centralization of information,
Yep.
uh, and the context that gives everybody, the shared context that gives everybody to operate from.
Yep.
Uh,
And
12 nationalities among 20 people. That is not a few.
yeah,
What's the dominant language in the company?
always English. Yeah. There. Apart from that, there's a few Germans. The management team, so my co-founder, myself, and our CEO, we have roots in Germany and Munich, and there's also one employee. But also because we're used to such an international background, sometimes it happens that it's us 3 Germans on a call and we're speaking English before realizing we can shift to German. Just it's too natural, I would say. Um, yeah.
I love it. When you're communicating in written form, even with your German colleagues, do you communicate in English to make it easy to share forward?
Partially. It really depends on the context. If I feel like this is gonna be easier for them to forward or not, then it's a bit of like mix of English German, really.
Yeah. Um, okay. And let me ask you a couple other questions. One is, as we spoke earlier about the shift from excuse me, from a focus on sort of marginal optimizations to uh, to learning fast, to more experimentation. I'm wondering if even with that shift if you've still found places that you apply the optimization mindset techniques, um, even in this early stage startup that you'd honed previously.
I would say when it comes to financial planning, we have a very detailed information set on like where our spending is going, and spending is something that you can more analyze and optimize and calculate for the future. And this is where we just constantly rethink about like, do we need to incur those costs right now? Are there ways to reduce spending? Like there's a lot of tools, for example, that we need as an organization to work efficiently. And sometimes everyone signs up or wants these tools, but then they're not used. So there's some easy ways to reduce some spending. Um, and I would also say my level of like knowledge about the like legal and financial framework helps run this company across these different entities. So figuring out how do we invoice in between those companies, for example, on all these little things that would hold me up otherwise, and I would need to find a
Mm-hmm.
workflow for it. I kind of know from my previous employer because also there in every country we had a subsidiary, um, sometimes multiple. So there was a lot of um, like like how do we set things up clean, how do we make it work efficiently, and this is also what allows us to run through these multiple locations. Like it's probably less effort than having one entity in Germany.
Yeah. I'm curious as I hear you talking about workflows. One of the things that I keep talking with clients about it, uh, I'm always curious for AI startups in particular, how much you are actively finding ways of using AI in your internal workflows as well as obviously in your product.
Yeah. um, it's almost hard to avoid them nowadays because they're built in so many tools. Like Notion has its AI feature. Even like our expense management tool has AI features, so they're kind of helping you everywhere you go. There's some specific ones that we also seek out to use. I mean, uh, ChatGPT or the alternatives, they're kind of a no-brainer to summarize some information, to find some
What
harder
would
to.
you say are like the two or three most common and most useful AI or automation workflows that you use like every day or a few times a week? You're like, this is
Yeah.
this is being used. Maybe I'm not even thinking about it because it's happening in the background.
Yeah. I would say Fixer is one of those. So they're a UK startup that helps with email writing and categorization and all of that. And it's pretty cool. So essentially, if you send me an email, Jack, with a question, a second later, I have a draft ready in my inbox without thinking about it that has a reply to you. And it just gets better over time. The more information it has, it's not going to replace my job, but it's going to make it easier. And I even have a EA that helps me with these things. But this way, he can even work smarter on the higher level topics, and he doesn't need to categorize emails or these things that I need for my day to day because I get so many emails. So that's really great because also if someone's on holiday, this thing keeps running. But that's maybe more for me because I get so many emails. There's some people in at Resoniks that barely get any emails that would have zero value, or where the emails are so specific on the technical side that it just doesn't have that information. But for
Mhm.
keeping the conversation flowing, it's really a good one, and that startup is also doing really well from what I can read online. So that's something, yeah, helps me every day, helps me every time an email comes in. I would say that's also the main one. We're now, of course, also playing around with Lovable. You probably heard about their success recently.
Yeah.
Just a yeah, more on the technical side, trying to streamline some.
Say more about that because mostly I hear about Lovable being used for virtual products. Is there an app interface or something that that you're using it for?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. So we have our own UI that comes with the whole system. So what you get from us is not only the sensors, but and the AI, but the software that connects everything, and that makes it so modular. And through the UI, for example, you would adjust our solution to the customer's needs because every object is different. So we want to work with different impact energies, different recording durations, and that the customer can control using the UI. And yeah, I just saw my colleague using it the other day and kind of recognized the logo. I don't know exactly how we use it. It's something between like getting designs from Figma into the product faster. And so far seems to be working well.
brilliant, brilliant. Um, and thank you for correcting my pronunciation. Resoniks, not Resoniks.
Yeah, both works. It's resonance and acoustics basically combined in one. Uh,
Oh, beautiful. Um, what's the most exciting next phase, or let me say it differently. What are you most excited about in the next phase of the company?
yeah. So the last year and a half to 2 years has really been focused on the product development and first pilots with our design customers. So more on the R&D stage, and it's a really complex product. We try to make it look as simple as possible and really make it work that anyone can operate our system, because that's the big thing we're solving. It's the skill shortage for the processes that the customers are currently doing. Like if they're tracing a part by ultrasonic testing, not only do they need like a consumable medium, but it takes a long time and you need to know what you're doing. So that's been super exciting because I've never built a hardware product in that regard, and that's where it's been super valuable to have a co-founder like Fabian, who's done this like at Intel several times, and where he also had previous startup experience. But I'm really looking forward to the next phase where it's going to be more market entry and expansion. And having more people use our product, having actually the benefits that they get out of using our product, and seeing how fast we can scale. So both are very interesting, but of course, startups are all about scaling. And that next phase is not only going to be super interesting, but very critical as well, because we then want to really show that we can get a lot of traction in Europe. We already have really, really great, well-known customers, but we want to show that we can get proper traction in Europe before then expanding, for example, internationally.
All right. I feel excited listening to you to describe that. Any final thoughts you want to make sure that our listeners hear from you about leading the startup in this phase or about Resoniks in this moment of its evolution?
I mean, we definitely need more startups also in the industry domain. It's still quite a niche, but there's still so many things to optimize. At the same time, it is harder to get capital in that domain, and also the customers are often a bit more hesitant. So it would be great that like there was more like push from those sides just to make it easier, especially during the early phases, because as a startup in this domain, yeah, you need to go through the R&D phase to really have an impact. But overall, I can recommend everyone who has the patience and perseverance and interest to pursue something like that. It's been really eye-opening to enter this manufacturing domain to see how much is still done manually as well that we can optimize. And in the end, for my co-founder and myself, it's important that we can make an impact, not only with the testing we do, but actually with the benefits our customers have. And quality control is like a great starting point where we can make sure things don't break when they leave the factory. We can even make sure the whole manufacturing process is more efficient. So there's also some like sustainability advantages that we don't know so much about yet, but that we know that they're there. And we believe there's a lot that we can do with acoustics in the future. Like factories are really the starting point, because if you think about it, at some point we should be able to tap any surface, any object, and know what it is inside. So really, just like we use cameras, we should be able to use sounds and tap things. And that's where we really want to head. So that's gonna take a few years. It's gonna take a lot of data, right? Because we're collecting our own data for these algorithms. But that's a super exciting phase to see what else we can solve with acoustics.
What a compelling vision. I love it. It resonates.
Thanks, Jack. That's usually what I say at conferences as well.
I love it. All right. Felix Wassman from Resoniks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jack, for having me.